If you're over 60 and still being told that fiber is the answer to constipation, I want you to stop and think about this for a second. Imagine trying to push dry sand through a narrow pipe. You keep adding more sand, thinking that's the solution, but nothing moves because there's no water, no lubrication, nothing to help it slide. That's exactly what happens when people load up on fiber without addressing the real problem first. After 60, the intestinal lining naturally produces less mucus. The muscles that line your colon get weaker and slower. The whole system takes longer to move waste from point A to point B, and dumping more bulk into a slow, dry pipe doesn't fix any of that. In a lot of cases, it makes things worse. So in this video, we're not talking about fiber. We're talking about 3 morning habits that actually lubricate the gut, soften what's stuck, and get things moving the way they should. Number 2 is something most doctors never bring up with their patients. And number 3 takes under 60 seconds and costs you nothing. So let's start with the one thing you probably already have in your kitchen. Item 1, the olive oil and lemon shot. 1 tablespoon of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil mixed with the juice of half a fresh lemon, taken on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. That's it. 2 ingredients, no blender, no complicated prep. This combination has been used in Mediterranean households for generations, long before anyone ran a clinical trial on it. And the reason it works comes down to basic biology. Olive oil, specifically the cold-pressed extra virgin kind, contains 2 compounds that matter a lot here. The first is oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that coats the intestinal walls and reduces the kind of low-grade inflammation that slows gut motility in older adults. When the gut lining is inflamed or irritated, it tightens up. Motility slows, things stall. Oleic acid works against that process directly. The second compound is oleocanthal, which acts a lot like ibuprofen in terms of its anti-inflammatory effect, but without the side effects that come with long-term NSAID use, which is a real concern for anyone over 60. Together, these 2 compounds don't just coat the gut, they help calm it down enough to actually do its job. But the oil alone isn't the whole story. What the lemon does is equally important and often overlooked. When lemon juice hits your stomach on an empty stomach, it triggers a signal to the gallbladder. The gallbladder responds by releasing bile into the digestive tract. Most people think of bile as something that breaks down fat, and it does, but it's also one of the body's own natural gut lubricants. Bile softens the contents of the intestine and helps stimulate the migrating motor complex, which is the wave-like muscle contractions that push waste through the colon in between meals. After 60, those contractions tend to weaken. The lemon and oil combination gives the whole system a gentle push to restart that process. Research published in the Journal of Renal Nutrition found that olive oil is well tolerated in older adults and supports bowel regularity without the bloating that high-fiber diets often cause. That's not a small thing. A lot of people over 60 are dealing with both constipation and bloating at the same time, and fiber can make both worse simultaneously. The oil and lemon combination doesn't add bulk, it adds lubrication, which is a completely different mechanism. Now, here's the part most people get wrong. They take the shot and then immediately pour a cup of coffee. Coffee is acidic, and it moves quickly through the stomach. When you chase the olive oil with coffee right away, you're essentially flushing the coating before it has a chance to do anything. The protocol matters as much as the ingredients. Take the shot, then wait 15 to 20 minutes before eating or drinking anything else. Give the oil time to coat the gut wall, and give the lemon time to trigger that bile response properly. That window is where the benefit actually happens. One more thing on dosage, because this trips people up. Start with 1 tablespoon of olive oil, not 2, not 3. 1. The goal is lubrication, not a laxative effect. Too much olive oil too fast can cause loose stools or stomach cramping, especially in people whose systems aren't used to it. If you've never done this before, start with half a teaspoon for the first 3 days, then move up to a full tablespoon by the end of the first week. Your gut needs time to adjust to the morning fat signal. What if I told you this habit is older than most of the supplements sitting in your medicine cabinet right now? Mediterranean grandmothers have been doing a version of this for hundreds of years. The olive oil, the lemon, the empty stomach, the waiting. Modern research is essentially confirming what those women already knew from watching their own bodies. The gut needs fat to move. It needs bile to soften. And it needs time in the morning before anything else comes in to actually do the work. One brief note for anyone with active gallbladder disease or a history of GERD: start with no more than half a teaspoon of oil and a few drops of lemon rather than the full juice. The gallbladder stimulation from a full tablespoon of fat can occasionally trigger discomfort if there's existing inflammation. Start small, see how your body responds over a week, and build from there. That one works from the inside out. This next one works from the outside in, and most people have never heard of it from any doctor they've ever seen. Item 2, the ileocecal valve massage. Right now, before you get out of bed tomorrow morning, you could do something that costs nothing, requires no ingredients, and takes exactly 60 seconds. Most people have never tried it because their doctor has never mentioned it. That's not because it doesn't work. It's because it comes from osteopathic and chiropractic medicine, not from mainstream gastroenterology, so it never made it into the standard advice general practitioners give at annual checkups. The technique is called the ileocecal valve massage, and once you understand what it's targeting, the logic behind it becomes hard to argue with. The ileocecal valve sits at the junction where your small intestine meets your large intestine in the lower right side of your abdomen. Picture a trap door between 2 rooms. Waste finishes moving through the small intestine, passes through that valve, and enters the colon, where it continues toward the exit. In a healthy younger gut, that valve opens and closes on a regular rhythm. But in older adults, it can become sluggish. Sometimes it gets stuck in a partially closed position, which backs everything up on the colon side and creates that familiar combination of bloating, pressure, and constipation that doesn't respond to anything you eat or drink. You can take all the fiber in the world and it won't budge a valve that isn't moving properly. That's a mechanical problem, and it needs a mechanical solution. Here's how you do it. Lie flat on your back, either still in bed or on the floor. Find your right hip bone with your fingers. Move about 2 inches up and 2 inches inward from that point. That general area is where the ileocecal valve sits beneath the surface. Place 2 or 3 fingers on that spot and apply light, circular, clockwise pressure, not hard. You're not trying to dig into the muscle. This is gentle enough that it should feel like moderate pressure, similar to how you'd press on a bruise to test if it's sore, but without any real discomfort. Hold that gentle clockwise circle for about 30 seconds. After those 30 seconds, change the movement. Instead of circling, Sweep your fingers slowly upward along the right side of your abdomen from that lower right point up toward your lower right ribs. That sweeping motion follows the natural direction the colon is supposed to move waste, which is upward on the right side, then across the middle, then down the left. You're essentially encouraging movement in the direction that already needs to happen. Do that sweep 2 or 3 times, slow and deliberate, and you're done. The whole thing takes under a minute. Now, you might be wondering why something this simple isn't common knowledge. The honest answer is that it doesn't come in a bottle, and nobody profits from teaching it. Compare that to the probiotic market, where a single month's supply of a mid-range supplement can run anywhere from $30 to $60, with results that vary widely depending on the person, the strain, and whether the bacteria actually survive long enough to reach the colon intact. The ileocecal massage costs nothing, it doesn't expire, it doesn't interact with any medications, and it works on a completely different level than probiotics do because it's addressing physical sluggishness in the valve itself rather than trying to change the bacterial environment downstream. There's another layer to this that doesn't get talked about enough. When that valve is stuck or sluggish, the backup it creates can cause symptoms that look like other problems entirely. Gas that sits on the right side and gets mistaken for appendix pain. Bloating that shows up even on days when you haven't eaten anything unusual. A low-grade sense of pressure in the lower abdomen that never quite goes away. A lot of people in their 60s and 70s carry those symptoms for years and never connect them to this one small valve. Once the valve starts moving again with regular morning massage, those secondary symptoms often ease up as well. A brief safety note before moving on. Skip this technique if you've had abdominal surgery in the last 6 months, or if you're currently dealing with an active hernia in the abdominal area. The pressure is gentle, but it's still mechanical contact over a vulnerable region, so it's worth waiting until your doctor clears you for any kind of abdominal self-massage. For everyone else, it's a reasonable daily habit with no real downside. 2 down. The last habit on this list might actually be the one you underestimate the most, because it sounds almost too simple, but most people are getting it completely wrong every single morning, and that one mistake is undoing a lot of what they're already trying to do for their gut. Item 3, warm water with a pinch of sea salt. Within the first 10 minutes of waking up, before the olive oil shot, before coffee, before anything else, drink a full glass of warm water with a small pinch of unrefined sea salt or Himalayan salt stirred in. That's the entire habit. It sounds almost insultingly simple, but the reason most people aren't getting results from plain morning water comes down to 2 details. They're consistently getting wrong the temperature and the salt. Cold water, which is what most people grab straight from the tap or the fridge, moves through your system fast. It passes through the stomach, gets filtered by the kidneys, and comes out as urine before it has any meaningful contact with the colon wall. Your colon doesn't get hydrated, your stool doesn't soften. The water essentially bypasses the problem entirely. Warm water, close to body temperature, behaves differently. It relaxes the smooth muscle tissue lining the intestines, which makes the whole system more receptive to movement, and it slows down enough in transit to actually reach the colon before it gets redirected. The salt is where the second mistake happens. Table salt is sodium chloride, stripped of everything else. Unrefined sea salt and Himalayan salt still contain trace minerals including magnesium, potassium, and calcium, and those minerals change how the water behaves at the cellular level. They help pull moisture into the colon wall and into the stool itself rather than letting it drain away through the kidneys. Think of it as the difference between watering dry soil with plain water versus water that has a small amount of fertilizer dissolved in it. The minerals help the water stay where it needs to go. That's what softens stool at the source instead of just adding more bulk from the outside. The pinch has to be small, a tiny amount, just enough to slightly change the taste of the water. This is not a saltwater cleanse, which uses much larger quantities and works through a completely different mechanism. A small pinch delivers the trace minerals without loading your system with sodium. Now for the sequencing, because this matters if you're using all three habits together, start with the warm salt water, drink it slowly over about 5 minutes, then wait another 5 minutes and then take the olive oil and lemon shot. The salt water prepares the gut wall to receive the oil coating. The oil then has a cleaner, more hydrated surface to work with. The ileocecal massage fits in right before any of this while you're still lying in bed. Wake up, do the massage, get up, drink the salt water, wait, then take the shot. Total time from start to finish is under 3 minutes. Anyone managing kidney disease or high blood pressure should use the absolute smallest amount of salt possible and check with their doctor first, since even trace amounts of additional sodium can matter in those situations. These three habits do something fiber alone never can. They lubricate the gut wall, stimulate a sluggish valve, and hydrate the colon from the inside out. Before you start, a quick note. If you have gallbladder disease, kidney disease, GERD, a recent abdominal surgery, or you're on blood thinners, check with your doctor first, especially for the olive oil shot and the salt water. Now let me know in the comments which of these three you're going to try tomorrow morning, and subscribe so you don't miss our next video built for people over 60 who want real solutions, not just more pills.